The final component for us to explore is going to be the destruction component. When designing this, I tried to think about how it might be used on a completely different set of parent actors and the things that can be shared between them. Specifically thinking about the sort of things that they may all want to implement when destroyed, such as playing a particle effect that could also be extended to sound effects. And then some different things like having a property to make it explosive and also having that property available for non-explosive actors as well. So I would say we've been leaving the best component till last. In the destruction component header file then, although this is going to allow us to do quite a lot of different things, there are really only a few different properties and a single function to go over. So the first thing, like I've mentioned, is I have a couple of different booleans. The first one allows us to control whether or not this is going to be explosive. The idea behind this is that we're going to have, if this is explosive, then we have the explosive radius to use down below. And the idea is that for certain things, maybe like explosive barrels or grenades or something, we can put this on, and that would mean that as well as being destroyed when something happens to this, it will also potentially allow us to create some kind of chain effect where we can trigger other things to be destroyed and explode as well. Then the other one is completely optional. The second boolean here is the draw debug, and of course this is just for us to view things. And again, this is going to allow us to see how on some actors we can enable and toggle this, and on others we can just play the effect as we'd like to see it in game. But of course this does also allow us to very quickly and easily check if the explosive radius is as big or as small as we need it to be. The final thing which is exposed here is the Niagara system particle. So this is just a very simple particle to kind of represent that explosion, to show again that we can very quickly and easily swap out different particles on different components. So each different actor can look a little bit different when they explode. Now you'll notice that all of these have been set to be edit anywhere. So we have full access to these in the editor, and they've just been put in their own categories. And then the two things below, we have the standard thing you're very familiar with by now, the pointer to the owner of type A actor. So we're going to get that a little bit later, as we will be needing to bind this to the destruction function or the on actor destroy. And that is going to be bound to our destruct function, which is specific to our destruction component. So moving on over to our code file, what we have again, the first thing to note here is in the constructor. I've made sure that we've set the can have a tick to be false, so we don't want our component tick to be running in this class because again, this is a very specific kind of one fire and done type of functionality. We won't need anything to be checked constantly, so we can save a little bit of performance there. Then moving down on the begin play, we have again the getting and setting of the owner, checking that we have something available in that owner object. And then if we do, we're just going to do our dynamic binding to the on destroyed function on the owner, bind that to this class's destruct function. So whenever our owning actor is destroyed, before that happens, we're just going to call our destruct function and play the effects. And if it's been set on the component, then we're also going to play our destruction effect as well to just potentially destroy other actors. So we can see that down here. I've added quite a few comments. I'm just going to see if I can get all of this on screen in the presentation mode here. So there we go. We can see the entire function. What we have is we're checking, first of all, if we have a particle system. Of course, we want to make sure that we have a valid particle to play. If we do, then just very simply going to play the particle system, which has been set in the editor. Then the next thing, we're going to find out if this has been set to be explosive. Now, this is, again, going to be very useful, I think. And if it has, we're going to begin by creating a new array of hit results. So we want to find everything within a certain area that we may want to pass this explosive information onto. That's just going to be based on our start and end location, which is quite simply the actor's location for both. You can set that to be a kind of different, more obscure shaped radius if you wanted to go for something like a streak in Bomberman as an example there. And I'm quite simply using the F collision shape named coal shape, which is using the sphere shape trace. And then the radius of that sphere is going to be the explosive radius that we've again exposed in the editor using the U property specifiers. Then finally, we're going to get our hit results. So that's going to be a sweep multiplied by channel. We're passing in the hit results, so we have that field, the start and end. So because this is a sphere, they're going to be the same. But it's nice to have those kind of explicitly named so we can change and edit these if we wanted to. We're then passing in our rotation for the F quaternion and we're just passing in our identity, which is, if you're not familiar with that, which is zeroing out, so there's no rotation being added to that. The trace channel will be camera. This would have worked just as well on visible or visibility. And then finally, the shape that we want to do this sweep by is going to be our coal shape, which is our make sphere from just above. So next, again, this is the optional bit, is if we are making this an explosive destructible component, then I've given the option as well for us to draw a debug sphere, just using the same information, so that debug is the same size as our sweep trace that we've just done. And this again is just so that we can debug and quickly see how big our explosion was, whether it's touching the other objects and if they're responding as we would like. And the final part's here to wrap this up. We're then, for everything that we've hit, we're going to run through a for each loop for everything that we have stored in our array. Again, you can uncomment this if you want and add some on-screen debug messages. This is just going to return the name of anything you've hit if you wanted to uncomment this section here. I'm going to leave this comment, but I figured that would be useful for you to see and check against the sphere trace to make sure that everything's being returned correctly. And I will also just drop this down now that we're down here. The final thing is, for each of these actors that we've hit, we're quite simply going to create a new point damage event object here named point damage. And for all of our hit results, we're going to get the actor, call that generic take damage function again. So every actor type will have this. So what we're assuming is that they have the health component and the health interface implemented. If it does, again, this is going to process the health depletion. When that goes to 0, it's going to call the health depleted function. And again, this is going to help us get back into this loop of very reusable classes. So we're going to pass in 100 units of damage, just creating the point damage type. This could have been something like area or environmental damage if you wanted it to be. The instigator is going to be from the first player controller, and the damage causer is going to be the owner. So again, this is just the use of a very standard function inside of Unreal, but just a quick overview of what that's doing if you're not familiar with the take damage function. So this actor here, the get owner, is just going to allow you, if you ever needed to call something like in multiplayer games, you might want to specify who killed the most recent player or something. You could say that the destruction was caused by the name of the actor that this component was on. So that's the sort of reason that you'd want to use this. But that's it. So it's quite simple, but it's going to provide a lot of different kind of flexibility and options for us with our destructive components. So the other thing you'll notice here is if this is set to false, pretty much the only thing this class is going to be doing, we won't be doing any of this. So the only other thing that this will be doing is playing a particle system. What you might want to do is come in and, like I mentioned earlier, add in some sound effects, different kind of effects to play, so camera shakes or things like that can all be kind of managed from this destruction effect. So again, that gives you the flexibility that not all destructible things may need to cause a camera shake or play a sound effect, but it will have that option if you wanted to extend this type of class. And again, it means you only need to program that once, and anything that inherits this component will at least have the option to play those different effects. So back in the editor, this is going to be the fun bit. We can start adding these to all of our different actors. So we already know that all of our actors are going to have the destruction component added to them because we've done that in the code. So each of them by default will have this included. What we can do is play around with some of the different effects. And I've provided 3 different particle systems. And by different particle systems, I mean that I have made a recolor of each of them. So we've got a blue, a red, and a green. So I'm going to make these all different colors. I'm going to set the middle one to be explosive, and I'll set this one to be green. And then I'll set the final one to draw debug. Let's also set this to be explosive, and we can move this one a little bit closer in a moment, and set the explosive radius to be a little bit bigger. And we'll set this one to red. And then if we come through, we can go through all of the other actors as well. So all of these have them on too. We can come in here, we'll make this one blue. And you don't have this for all of them, but I'll just, in case any of these do kind of get within that radius, then we'll have all of these at least with some kind of particle effect. So that's it. So that is all of our variables set up. We've got some which are showing debugs, some which are causing other explosions or passing on that explosive property, and some which are not. So if we come and press play, we can test a few different things now. So if you remember, we know that the one in the middle is the one which should trigger other things to explode because we've set that to be explosive. So we can see that it took off enough damage from the left one. And remember, for the health component on this one, this actually has quite a lot of health, so it did take some damage. It means we only need to shoot it twice now, and that will also explode. This one was set to draw the debug line, so we've got our drawing debug, and we can see it just missed blowing up the component next to it. So let's move this a little bit closer. We can have some fun with this again. So what I'll do is I'll come in and we can maybe fire off twice at this one, and then that means the explosive damage from that one will apply, and you can see that had a chain effect going to all of the other actors. They're all playing their different colors, so this is again very simple different particle effects, but they're all playing the different systems that we give them. So you can see again that just a few very small tweaks, we've got 3 or 4 completely different types of explosion going on. Some kind of passing on that explosive property, and again, this is how you can get that kind of very fun emergent gameplay where there's this chain effect going on, and things that you may not have designed specifically to happen can kind of start influencing other actors around the level, and they can start doing their own thing as well. So we've now created our own custom components and taken a look at some of the components that have been included in the demo project for the course. Between these examples, I hope that you've learned a number of ways that you can create and implement your own components, and hopefully you're looking forward to taking these new considerations and opportunities into your own projects to speed up and expand the flexibility of your project development pipeline.